I, 32, thought my life was perfect. I truly did. My husband, Mark, and I were expecting our first child, a little girl. We had a beautiful home. We had a successful business that we had built from nothing. It felt like every dream I ever had was coming true, all at once. The world was soft and warm, full of promise. I spent my days picking out paint colors for the nursery and feeling the gentle flutter of my baby kicking inside me. I was happy. That happiness was a fragile little bubble, and I had no idea it was about to burst. The first hint of trouble was small. So small I almost dismissed it. Mark started coming home late. At first, it was just an hour or two. He would blame traffic or a meeting that ran over. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was a dedicated husband and a driven businessman. He was working hard for us, for our growing family. That is what I told myself. That is the story I clung to as the late nights became later and the excuses became thinner. He stopped calling to let me know he would be late. He would just walk in long after I had gone to bed, smelling of fancy restaurant food and a perfume that was not mine. I tried to talk to him about it. One evening, as he was loosening his tie, I sat on the edge of our bed. My belly was a round, tight drum between us. "You're working so much, Mark," I said. "Is everything okay at the office?" He did not look at me. He just kept unbuttoning his shirt. "Everything is fine," he said. "Just a big project. You know how it is." "I do know," I said softly. "I helped you build that company, remember? I just miss you." "We miss you." I placed a hand on my stomach. He sighed, a heavy, annoyed sound that made my chest tighten. "I am doing this for us," he said. "Do you want this baby to have everything? Or not? This is what it takes." His words were like a slap. He made it sound like my wanting him home was a complaint about his providing for us. He was making me feel guilty for missing my own husband. That was new. He had never done that before. I felt a cold knot of fear in my stomach that had nothing to do with the baby. I decided to let it go for the night. I told myself I was being hormonal and overly sensitive because of the pregnancy. I wanted to believe that. It was easier than believing my husband was lying to my face. A few days later, I was doing our laundry when I found it. A receipt tucked into the pocket of his suit trousers. It was from a very expensive jewelry store downtown. My heart gave a little leap. Was it a surprise for me? A push present, maybe? I smiled to myself, feeling a rush of relief. I had been silly to worry. Of course, he still loved me. He was just stressed. I unfolded the receipt, my hands trembling a little with excitement. The smile faded from my face. The date on the receipt was from 2 weeks ago. The item purchased was a delicate gold necklace with a single, perfect diamond. I had not received a necklace. I searched my memory, trying to think if he had mentioned a gift for his mother or his sister. He had not. The total on the receipt was staggering. It was more than we had spent on the new crib and changing table combined. A wave of nausea washed over me. This was not a work expense. This was not a family gift. This was something else entirely. I put the receipt on his bedside table that evening. I did not say anything. I just left it there, waiting for him to see it. I wanted to see what he would do. I wanted to see what new lie he would invent. He came into the bedroom late again, and I pretended to be asleep. I heard him move around the room, getting undressed. I heard the rustle of paper as he picked up the receipt. The room was silent for a long, long time. I held my breath, my body rigid. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "You went through my pockets." I opened my eyes and turned to look at him. He was standing there in his boxers, the receipt clutched in his hand. He looked angry, not guilty. That was what hurt the most. "It fell out in the laundry," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Who is the necklace for, Mark?" He scoffed. "It was a client gift," he said, his voice clipped. "We landed a huge account. It's just part of doing business." "A client gift?" I asked, sitting up. "You spent thousands of dollars on a diamond necklace for a client? Which client? Mrs. Henderson from the logistics firm? The one who is in her 60s? He glared at me. "You don't know anything about my business anymore," he said. "You've been too busy playing housewife. Just leave it alone." The cruelty of that statement stole my breath. Playing housewife? I had given up my own career to help him start his company. I had poured my inheritance into it. I had worked 80-hour weeks alongside him for the first 3 years, handling the books, the marketing, the HR, everything he did not want to do. I had done that so he could be the face of the company, the brilliant innovator. I did it because I believed in him, in us. And now he was dismissing all of it, dismissing me. I knew then, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he was having an affair. The necklace was for her. The late nights were for her. The fancy dinners were for her. And he was not even sorry. He was angry that I had caught him. The bubble of my perfect life did not just burst. It shattered into a million tiny, sharp pieces, and every single one of them was cutting me. I knew I couldn't just let this go. This wasn't just about a necklace anymore. It was about everything. My marriage, my family, my future, and my company. The next morning, I called my best friend, Sarah. She had been my maid of honor. She knew Mark almost as well as I did. I told her everything, my voice breaking as I recounted the conversation about the necklace. She listened patiently, without interrupting. "Oh, honey," she said when I finished. "I am so sorry. What do I do, Sarah?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "He's lying to me. I know he is." "First you breathe," she said, her voice firm but kind. "You need to stay calm for the baby. Panicking won't help. We need to think." "Think about what?" I asked. "My husband is cheating on me. We need to think about protecting you and that baby," she said. "You said you put your inheritance into the company. Is your name on anything official?" I thought back to the early days. The whirlwind of paperwork and legal documents. "Yes," I said slowly. "We had a prenuptial agreement. My lawyer at the time insisted. It outlines my initial investment and my stake in the business. Mark called it a formality. He said we would never need it." "Well, thank God for that lawyer," Sarah said. "You need to find that document. And you need to start gathering evidence. Don't confront him again." "Not yet. Just watch. And listen. And document everything." Her words gave me a sense of purpose. It was better than sitting around crying. I had to be smart. I had to be strong, not just for myself but for my daughter. After I hung up with Sarah, I went to the home office and started searching for the prenup. It was in our safe, right where I remembered. I read through it carefully. My hands shook as I read the clauses my father's old lawyer had insisted upon. He had been so protective of my inheritance. He had made sure to include a clause that tied my investment directly to a percentage of ownership. Mark had always acted like the company was his, and his alone. The paper in my hands said something very different. That evening, Mark came home at a reasonable hour for the first time in weeks. He brought me flowers. They were cheap carnations from the grocery store, not the lilies he knew I loved. It was a guilty gesture, and a lazy one at that. He was trying to smooth things over, without actually apologizing. "I'm sorry about last night," he said, handing me the flowers. "I've been under a lot of pressure." I took the flowers and put them in a vase, my back to him. "I understand," I said, my voice carefully neutral. I was not going to make it easy for him. "So we're good?" he asked, coming up behind me and putting his hands on my shoulders. I flinched at his touch. I could not help it. I turned to face him. "Mark, I need you to be honest with me," I said, looking him directly in the eyes. "Is there someone else?" The question hung in the air between us. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Panic? Fear? He quickly masked it with a look of wounded indignation. "What?" "Of course not," he said, his voice rising. "How could you even ask me that? Especially now, with the baby coming. I can't believe you'd accuse me of something so horrible." He was gaslighting me. He was turning his betrayal into my fault. He was making me the villain for daring to suspect him. A cold, hard anger began to form in my chest, replacing the grief. It was a new feeling, sharp and clear. "It was just a question," I said calmly. I would not let him see how much he was hurting me. I would not give him that satisfaction. "Well, it's a ridiculous question," he snapped. I'm going to take a shower. He stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there with a scent of cheap flowers and expensive lies. I knew I needed more than just a gut feeling. I needed proof. The next day, I started digging. I logged into our joint bank account. I scrolled through months of statements. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. Dozens of charges for fancy restaurants I had never been to, hotel rooms in our own city, purchases from lingerie stores. And then I saw it. The charge from the jewelry store, matching the receipt I had found. It was followed a week later by a charge from a high-end floral shop for an amount that would have bought 100 bouquets of grocery store carnations. Each transaction was a small betrayal, a stab in the heart. He was whining and dining this other woman, buying her gifts, all with our money. Money I had helped earn. Money we were supposed to be saving for our daughter. The anger inside me burned hotter. This was not just an affair. This was a theft. He was stealing from our family to fund his sordid little secret. I printed out the statements, highlighting every suspicious charge. I created a separate file on my computer, password protected. I started a journal, noting every late night, every lame excuse, every cold comment. Sarah was right. I had to document everything. I was no longer just a wife. I was building a case. My next step was to find out who she was. I had a sickening feeling she worked at the company. It would be just like Mark to do something so brazen, so cliché. I thought about the company's employee directory. I could not just ask for it, that would raise suspicion. But I remembered I still had access to the company's shared server from when I used to handle the administrative side of things. I had set it up myself years ago. I doubted Mark had ever thought to revoke my access. I sat at my laptop, my heart pounding. I typed in my old username and password. Access granted. A wave of relief and bitterness washed over me. He really did think I was just a housewife now. He had completely underestimated me. I navigated to the HR folder. I found the employee list. I scanned the names, my eyes searching for a Chloe, and there she was. Chloe Sanders. She was in the marketing department. I clicked on her profile. The picture that loaded made my stomach drop. She was young, maybe 25. She was beautiful, with long blonde hair and a bright, artificial smile. She was everything I was not right now. I was 32, pregnant, and my body felt like it belonged to a stranger. Seeing her face made it all real. She was not just a nameless, faceless other woman anymore. She had a name and a face and a job at my company. She was the one wearing my necklace. She was the one sleeping in my husband's bed. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage.
How dare she?
How dare he? They were both laughing at me. I needed to know more. I needed to see them together. I knew it would hurt, but I had to see it with my own eyes. I called Sarah again. I know who she is, I said, my voice tight. Okay, Sarah said. What are you going to do? I need to see them, I said. I need proof that I can't deny, that he can't lie his way out of. Are you sure you want to do that to yourself? She asked gently. I'm sure, I said. I need this. I need the anger to be stronger than the pain. The next evening, Mark told me he had another late client dinner. It was the perfect opportunity. I told him to have a good time, my voice sweet as sugar. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I got into my own. I drove to the restaurant he had mentioned, a fancy Italian place downtown. I parked across the street, in the shadows. I waited. An hour later, I saw them. Mark walked out of the restaurant, his arm wrapped tightly around Chloe's waist. She was laughing, her head thrown back. She was wearing the diamond necklace. He leaned down and kissed her, a long, passionate kiss right there on the sidewalk. It was not a kiss for a client. It was the kind of kiss he used to give me. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All the air left my lungs. The anger I had been nursing was suddenly gone, replaced by a wave of grief, so profound it felt like I was drowning. That was my husband, the man who had promised to love and cherish me, in sickness and in health, the father of my unborn child. And he was kissing another woman, a woman wearing a necklace he bought with our money. I took out my phone and I took a picture. My hand was shaking so badly the first one was blurry. I took another. And another. I needed a clear shot. I needed this image burned into my memory, a reminder of what he had done, of who he really was. This was the proof I needed. This was the end of my marriage. And the beginning of my fight. When I got home, I could not cry. I was numb. The tears were gone, burned away by the image of that kiss. I looked at the photos on my phone, the smiling trader and his young mistress. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The doubt was gone. The hope that I was wrong was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard truth.
And a decision.
I would not fall apart. I would not let him destroy me. He had started this war, but I was going to finish it. He thought I was a weak, hormonal, pregnant woman he could cast aside. He was about to find out how wrong he was.
I was not just a wife.
I was a founder. I was a partner. And I was a mother. And I would protect my child and my future with everything I had. The next morning, I made an appointment with the best divorce lawyer in the city. I had gotten her name from Sarah. Her name was Ms. Davis, and her reputation was formidable. She specialized in high-asset divorces, and she did not lose. When I walked into her office, I was armed with a folder full of evidence. The prenuptial agreement, the bank statements, the journal of his lies, and the photos from the night before. Ms. Davis was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s. She listened to my story without interruption, her expression unreadable. When I finished, I pushed the folder across her desk. "This is everything I have," I said. She spent the next hour reviewing the documents. She read every line of the prenup, her eyes lingering on the clauses about my initial investment. She examined the bank statements, circling charges with a red pen. She looked at the photos, her lips tightening into a thin line. Finally, she looked up at me. "Your husband is a fool," she said, her voice crisp. "A greedy, arrogant fool. Can you help me?" I asked, my voice small. "Help you," she said, a small, sharp smile on her face. "My dear, based on this paperwork, we're going to do a lot more than just help you. We're going to take him for everything he has." Her confidence was a balm to my shattered spirit. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. "What do you mean?" I asked. She tapped a finger on the prenuptial agreement. "This clause here," she said, "the one your father's lawyer insisted on. It's ironclad. It states that your initial investment was not just a loan, it was a convertible note. It gave you the option to convert that investment into a majority ownership stake in the company under specific circumstances." "What circumstances?" I asked, leaning forward. "One of them," she said, her smile widening, "is a breach of fidelity. It's a morality clause. An old-fashioned one, but legally sound. Your husband cheating on you, especially while you are pregnant, is a clear violation. And his attempts to move assets and hide money, which I am sure we will find more of, constitute financial malfeasance. Another trigger." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "So, what does that mean?" "It means," Ms. Davis said, leaning back in her chair, "that the company you thought was his is actually yours. All we have to do is prove the affair and the financial misconduct. And you, my dear, have already done most of the work for me." I felt a dizzying mix of emotions.
Shock,
Disbelief, and a fierce, burning sense of vindication. My father, who had passed away 5 years ago, was still protecting me. His love and foresight were reaching out from the past to save me and his grandchild. "He will fight it," I said. "Let him," Ms. Davis said. "He will lose, and it will cost him dearly. Now, here is what we are going to do. We are going to file for divorce. We are going to file an injunction to freeze all his assets, personal and business. And we are going to let him think this is a standard divorce. We will not play our trump card until we are in court. We will let him underestimate you until the very last moment." I walked out of her office feeling like a different person. The grief was still there, a dull ache in my chest. But it was overshadowed by a new, powerful resolve. I was not a victim. I was a woman on a mission. Mark had made a critical mistake. He had forgotten who he was dealing with. He had forgotten the woman who had stood by him when he had nothing, the woman who had invested her heart, her soul, and her inheritance into his dream. He was about to get a very painful reminder. The next few weeks were a blur of legal preparations. Ms. Davis and her team were incredible. They hired a forensic accountant who dug into the company's finances. It was worse than I had imagined. Mark had been siphoning money from the business for months. He had set up a shell corporation. He was paying Chloe a ridiculously high salary for a no-show job. He was using company funds to pay for their lavish lifestyle. He was systematically trying to devalue the company on paper so he could buy me out for pennies on the dollar in the divorce. Every new discovery felt like another betrayal, but it also strengthened my resolve. This was not just about a broken heart anymore. This was about justice. He was not just a cheater. He was a thief. And he was trying to steal my daughter's future. During this time, I had to continue living with him. It was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I had to pretend that everything was normal. I had to smile and make small talk, all while knowing he was betraying me in the most profound ways imaginable. I felt like I was playing a part in a twisted play. The loving, pregnant wife. It made my skin crawl. He was smug. He thought he had gotten away with it. He thought his lazy apologies and cheap flowers had fixed everything. He had no idea of the storm that was about to break over his head. One evening, his mother, Helen, came over for dinner. She had always been difficult, always making it clear that no woman was good enough for her perfect son. Since the affair had started, she had become even colder towards me. I was certain she knew about Chloe. She was probably thrilled. She had never liked me. During dinner, she kept making passive-aggressive comments. "You look tired, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You must be taking it easy. It's so important for the baby that you don't overexert yourself." It was a clear dig at my no longer working at the company. "I'm fine, Helen," I said, my voice tight. "Mark is working so hard," she continued, beaming at him. "Building this empire all by himself. It's so impressive. He needs a partner who can support him, not add to his stress." The implication was clear. I was the stress. I looked at Mark, expecting him to defend me. He just sat there, eating his pasta, a smug look on his face.
He was enjoying this.
He was letting his mother belittle me in my own home. That was it. I had reached my limit. I put my fork down. "You're right, Helen," I said, my voice calm and even. "Mark is working very hard. He's been putting in a lot of long hours, especially at client dinners. Isn't that right, Mark?" I looked directly at him. I saw the flash of panic in his eyes again. He knew what I was referring to. Helen looked back and forth between us, confused. "Yes, that's right," Mark said, clearing his throat. "A lot of dinners. And you know, Helen," I continued, my voice still sweet, "I've been thinking. You're right. Mark does need a supportive partner. And so do I. Which is why I've decided to file for divorce." The silence in the room was deafening. Helen's jaw dropped. Mark stared at me, his face a mask of shock and fury. He had not expected this. He thought he was in control. He thought he would be the one to leave me, on his own terms, when he was ready. "You what?" he finally choked out. "I'm divorcing you, Mark," I said, standing up. "And I would appreciate it if you and your mother would leave my house."
"Now."
"Your house?" he sputtered, getting to his feet. "This is my house." "Is it?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "We'll let the lawyer sort that out." Along with everything else, Helen started screeching.
"How dare you?
"After everything my son has done for you. You ungrateful little." "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. I was not shouting. I did not need to. The cold fury in my eyes was enough. Mark grabbed his mother's arm and pulled her towards the door. He turned back to look at me, his face twisted with rage. "You will regret this," he hissed. "No, Mark," I said, a small, cold smile on my face. "You will." After they left, I sank into a chair, my body trembling. But I was not scared. I was exhilarated. I had finally taken back my power. The game had begun. The next day, Mark was served with divorce papers and the injunction. He was furious. He called me, screaming. I did not answer. He sent a barrage of angry text messages. I did not read them. I let all communication go through my lawyer. Ms. Davis had warned me that he would be blindsided by the asset freeze. He had been so sure he could control the narrative and the money. Now he was locked out of his own accounts. He could not move money. He could not sell assets.
He was trapped.
His first legal move was to offer me a settlement. It was insulting. He offered me a small lump sum, far less than my initial investment, and a meager amount of child support. He clearly still believed he held all the cards. He thought he could bully me into accepting a pittance. Ms. Davis and I sent back a simple response. We reject your offer. This enraged him further. His lawyer sent a letter filled with threats. They accused me of being vindictive and emotionally unstable due to my pregnancy. They threatened to fight for full custody of the baby, claiming I was an unfit mother. It was a classic bully tactic designed to scare me into submission. It did not work. It only made me more determined. He's trying to use our baby against me, I told Ms. Davis, my voice shaking with anger. It's a desperate move, she said calmly, and it will backfire on him in court. Judges do not look kindly on fathers who use their children as pawns. We just stay the course. We let him dig his own grave. The weeks leading up to our first court date were tense. Mark and Chloe were now openly a couple. They were seen all over town, living it up. Chloe was posting pictures on social media of their lavish dates, her new designer clothes, and, of course, her diamond necklace. She was flaunting her victory. She thought she had won. They both did. I, on the other hand, was living a quiet life. I focused on my health and the baby. I went to my prenatal appointments. I decorated the nursery. I spent time with Sarah, who was my rock through it all. I was preparing for 2 births, the birth of my daughter and the birth of my new life. I also spent time preparing for the takeover of the company. Ms. Davis connected me with business consultants. I started studying the company's files, refamiliarizing myself with the operations. I had been out of the loop for a few years, but my knowledge of the business was deep.
It was like riding a bike.
I had built the systems. I knew how they worked. I started to form a plan for what I would do when the company was mine. I even had a secret meeting with David, Mark's business partner. David had always been a decent man, and I had a feeling he was not happy with the situation. I reached out to him through a neutral third party. We met at a quiet coffee shop. He looked uncomfortable. I shouldn't be here, he said.
I know, I said.
And I appreciate you coming. I just have one question, David. Did you know about the affair? He looked down at his coffee cup. I suspected, he admitted. Mark wasn't very discreet. And this Chloe. She's not a good person. She's ambitious in a very ugly way. Did you know he was trying to push me out of the company? That he was moving money? He looked up, his eyes wide with surprise.
No, he said.
I had no idea. I knew he was restructuring some things, but he told me it was to protect the company from a hostile takeover. He lied to me. He lied to a lot of people, I said. What are you going to do? He asked. I'm going to take back what's mine, I said simply. And I was hoping that when I do, you might consider staying on. The company needs stability. It needs someone with your experience. He looked at me for a long moment. Mark has been running the company into the ground lately, he said, his voice low. He's been arrogant, reckless. He's lost 2 major clients in the last 6 months. All he cares about is impressing Chloe, he sighed. If you can really get control of the company, and if you can get it back on track, then yes. I'll stay. I'll help you. His support was a huge relief. It meant I would not be starting from scratch. I would have an ally on the inside. Finally, the day of our first court hearing arrived. It was not the final divorce trial, but a preliminary hearing to deal with temporary support and the injunction. But Ms. Davis had decided this was the perfect time to drop the bomb. She wanted to establish our position of power from the very beginning. I walked into the courtroom, my belly leading the way. I was 8 months pregnant. I felt large and vulnerable, but I held my head high. I saw Mark sitting at the opposing table. He was whispering and laughing with Chloe, who was sitting in the gallery right behind him. She was dressed in a flashy, expensive outfit, a triumphant smirk on her face. They both looked at me with open contempt. They saw me as a pathetic, discarded wife. They had no idea what was coming. The hearing began. Mark's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of Mark as a brilliant, hard-working businessman who had been trapped in a loveless marriage with a demanding and unstable woman. He argued that the asset freeze was crippling the business and should be lifted immediately. He requested that I be given a minimal amount of temporary alimony, claiming I was perfectly capable of getting a job. It was a disgusting performance. He was trying to paint me as a gold digger. My blood boiled, but I remained calm, just as Ms. Davis had instructed. Then it was our turn. Ms. Davis stood up. She was the picture of calm, professional competence. "Your Honor," she began, "my client is not here today to ask for a handout. She is here to claim what is legally and rightfully hers." She then proceeded to lay out the facts, one by one. She presented the evidence of the affair, the photos, the hotel receipts, the jewelry store bill. I saw Chloe's smirk falter. Mark's face grew tight. Then, she moved on to the financial misconduct. She presented the forensic accountant's report, detailing the shell corporation, the inflated salary for Chloe, the siphoning of funds. The judge's expression grew stern. Mark started to look pale. "And finally, Your Honor," Ms. Davis said, her voice ringing with authority, "we come to the matter of the company itself. Mr. Smith has operated under the assumption that he is the sole owner of Smith Innovations. That is incorrect." She presented the prenuptial agreement to the judge. This document, signed by both parties, contains a convertible note. This note stipulates that my client's initial, substantial investment in the company could be converted into a 51% majority ownership stake in the event of, among other things, marital infidelity and financial malfeasance. A gasp went through the courtroom. I saw Mark's lawyer snatch the document from the clerk and start reading it, his eyes wide with disbelief. Mark just stared at Ms. Davis, his mouth hanging open. "We have proven both infidelity and financial malfeasance, Your Honor," Ms. Davis continued. "Therefore, my client has exercised her option to convert her note. As of this moment, she is the majority shareholder and controlling partner of Smith Innovations." She placed a final document on the judge's bench. "This is the official notice of conversion, which was filed this morning." The judge picked up the prenup. He read the clause carefully. He looked at the evidence of the affair. He looked at the financial report. He looked over at Mark, who was now ashen-faced. "Mr. Smith," the judge said, his voice grave, "is this your signature on this document?" Mark could only nod, speechless. "And were you of sound mind when you signed it?" "Yes, but," Mark started. "Then it appears to be a legally binding contract," the judge said. He looked at the documents again, then looked at Ms. Davis. "The clause seems clear. The conditions for conversion have been met." He then looked at me, his expression softening for a moment. Finally, he looked back at the courtroom. "Based on the evidence presented today," the judge announced, his voice booming in the silent room, "the court recognizes the legality of this conversion. The ownership and control of Smith Innovations are hereby awarded to the plaintiff, pending the final divorce settlement." The words echoed in the courtroom. "Awarded to me." The company was mine. It was real. We had won. I looked over at Mark. The color had completely drained from his face. He stared at the judge, his eyes wide with horror and disbelief. He had lost everything. The company he had built, the company he had stolen, was gone. He turned and looked at me, his expression a mixture of hatred and shock. Then he looked at Chloe. Her face was a mask of fury. The life she had been promised had just vanished. She stood up and stormed out of the courtroom without a backward glance. Mark watched her go. He turned back to the judge, then back to me. His world was crumbling around him. He had sacrificed his wife, his child, his integrity, all for nothing. He had been so sure of his own cleverness, so certain of my weakness. And in one stunning moment, it had all been stripped away. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He swayed on his feet. His eyes rolled back in his head. And then, with a choked gasp, he collapsed onto the floor. There was chaos. People were shouting. The bailiffs rushed forward. Paramedics were called. I just sat there, my hand on my belly, watching the man who had been my husband, the man who had tried to ruin me, being tended to on the floor of the courtroom. I did not feel pity. I did not feel joy. I felt a profound and quiet sense of justice. He had made his bed, and now he was lying in it. The aftermath of Mark's collapse was as dramatic as the event itself. He was taken to the hospital. The diagnosis was a severe panic attack, brought on by extreme stress. He stayed there for 2 days. During that time, the business world, our social circle, and what was left of our families exploded with the news. The story of the dramatic courtroom showdown was everywhere. The narrative was not what Mark would have wanted. He was not the powerful businessman wronged by a vindictive wife. He was the cheating husband who got outsmarted and lost his company. Chloe, true to her character, disappeared completely. She did not visit him in the hospital. She did not answer his calls. As soon as the money was gone, so was she. I later heard from David that she had cleared out her desk at the office the same afternoon as the court hearing. She took the expensive laptop and company phone with her. She was a scavenger, and the carcass she had been feeding on was no longer viable. I almost felt a sliver of pity for Mark for being so foolish as to believe her affection was genuine. But the feeling passed quickly. He had chosen her. He deserved her. His mother, Helen, was a different story. She tried to storm the hospital, demanding to see me. Of course, I was not there. Then she started calling me, leaving a string of increasingly hysterical voicemails. They ranged from threats to tearful pleas. "How could you do this to him?" she shrieked in one message. "He is the father of your child. He is in the hospital because of you. You have destroyed him." In the next message, her tone shifted. "Please," she sobbed. "We can work this out. Don't take his company. It's all he has. Think of your baby. Your baby needs a father who isn't broken." I did not respond to any of them. I had Ms. Davis send her a cease and desist letter. My boundary was clear. She was no longer a part of my life. Her son had made his choice, and she had supported him. They could face the consequences together. My own family, my sister Anna, was horrified and proud all at once. "I can't believe he did all that," she said over the phone. "But I also can't believe you did all that. You were amazing. Dad would be so proud of you." Her words meant the world to me. They were a reminder that I was not alone, that I came from a family that valued strength and integrity. My first official day as the CEO of what was now my company was surreal. I was nearly 9 months pregnant. I walked into the office, and it was like walking into a ghost town. People scattered when they saw me. They whispered behind their hands. They did not know what to expect. They thought I was there for revenge, to fire everyone who had been loyal to Mark. I called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room. David stood by my side. I looked out at the sea of anxious faces. I saw a few people who had been openly friendly with Chloe, people who had smirked at me during company parties. I also saw many faces I recognized from the early days, people who had been with us from the beginning. I kept my speech short and to the point. "I know there is a lot of uncertainty right now," I began, my voice steady. "And I know what you have probably heard. But I am not here to settle personal scores. I am here to save this company." I laid out the facts. I told them about the financial mismanagement, the clients that had been lost due to Mark's negligence. I did not need to mention the affair. They all knew. Mark's leadership was compromised, I said. He was not focused on the health of this business. I am. This company was built on a foundation of hard work and innovation. I was there when we laid the first bricks, and I will not let it crumble. Then I laid out my plan. I announced that David would be promoted to Chief Operating Officer, and that his first priority would be to reach out to the clients we had lost. I announced a temporary freeze on all non-essential spending until we could get a clear picture of the financial damage. And I made a promise. Your jobs are safe, I said. As long as you are committed to the success of this company, you have a place here. We are going to rebuild, and we are going to be stronger than ever. Now, let's get to work. The tension in the room broke. I saw people exchange looks of relief. A few even smiled. They were not being punished for Mark's sins. They were being given a chance. It was the right move, not just for the business, but for me. I did not want to be a tyrant. I wanted to be a leader. The final divorce proceedings were almost an anticlimax. Mark showed up, looking like a ghost. He was thin, pale, and defeated. He had a new, cheaper lawyer. He did not fight anymore. He agreed to all of our terms. He would get no part of the company. The house was mine. He would have supervised visitation with our daughter, once she was born, contingent on him completing a court-ordered anger management course. The child support he would pay was based on his new, much lower, earning potential. He had lost his company, his mistress, his home, and his reputation. He was a broken man. As we were leaving the courthouse, he approached me. It was the first time we had spoken directly since that disastrous dinner. I don't understand, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Why did you do this? We could have just gotten a divorce. You didn't have to take everything. I looked at him, this stranger who had once been the love of my life. You are wrong, I said, my voice cold and clear. You tried to take everything from me. You tried to leave me with nothing while I was pregnant with your child. You didn't just have an affair, Mark. You tried to erase me. You underestimated me. That was your mistake. This isn't what I did to you. This is what you did to yourself. I turned and walked away without looking back. There was nothing left to say. 2 weeks later, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. I named her Lily, after my favorite flowers. Holding her in my arms, I felt a love so fierce and protective it took my breath away. All the pain and turmoil of the past few months faded away. All that mattered was this tiny, perfect human in my arms. She was my future.
She was my why.
Life found a new rhythm. I took a few months of maternity leave, running the company from home with David's capable help. He was true to his word. He was a loyal and brilliant partner. We managed to win back one of the major clients Mark had lost. The company was stabilizing. The employees were motivated. There was a new sense of optimism in the air. When I returned to the office, I brought Lily with me. I converted a small and used office into a nursery. She became the official office baby. My employees loved her. Having her there reminded me every day what I was fighting for. I was not just a CEO. I was a mother, building a legacy for my daughter. I received one last letter from Helen. It was handwritten. She apologized for her behavior. She said she was ashamed of how she had treated me. She begged to be allowed to see her granddaughter. I thought about it for a long time. I discussed it with Sarah and my sister. In the end, I wrote back a short, simple note. I told her that forgiveness was a long road, and that if she truly wanted to be a part of Lily's life, she would have to earn that trust back, slowly and patiently. I would not allow any toxicity to touch my daughter. The ball was in her court. As for Mark, I hear about him from time to time. He is working a mid-level sales job at another company. He lives in a small apartment across town. He pays his child support on time. He has started his anger management classes. Maybe one day, he will be a father to Lily. But he will never again be the man I married. That man is gone forever, a casualty of his own greed and arrogance. Sometimes, when Lily is asleep in her crib and the house is quiet, I sit in my office and look out at the city lights. I think about the life I have now. It is not the life I had planned. It is harder in some ways, but it is also richer and more real. I am not just a wife or a partner. I am a leader. I am a survivor. I am a mother. Mark wanted to leave me with nothing. He thought he could break me, discard me, and walk away with the empire we had built together. Instead, he gave me everything. He gave me my strength. He gave me my independence. He gave me my company. And he gave me my daughter. He taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, that I am stronger than I ever imagined. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure my daughter knows it too. He never did learn his lesson about underestimating the woman he married, but I learned mine. I learned that I was capable of not only surviving his betrayal, but thriving in spite of it. My new life was my victory, a quiet, daily proof that he had failed to destroy me. He had, in his own twisted way, set me free. And for that, I suppose I should be grateful. But I am not. I am simply content. And that, I have learned, is a far more powerful and lasting feeling than revenge. It is peace.